a business empire so vast that it makes up 20% of an entire country's economy. A world where billion-dollar deals happen behind closed doors, where power struggles unfold like a K-drama, and where scandals reach the highest levels of government. Welcome to the world of Samsung. For decades, the Lee family has ruled this empire, but one man in particular has fought to secure his place at the top. Lee Jae-yong, also known as J.Y. Lee. His journey has been one of wealth, power, scandal, and redemption. From his rise as the heir to Samsung's throne to his shocking fall in a corruption scandal that shook South Korea, this is the real story of how Lee Jae-yong built, lost, and reclaimed control of the Samsung empire. And trust me, you won't believe how far he was willing to go to keep his dynasty alive. To understand Lee Jae-yong's rise, we have to go back to the man who built it all, Lee Kun-hee, his father and Samsung's legendary chairman. Lee Kun-hee transformed Samsung from a small electronics manufacturer into a global tech powerhouse, producing everything from smartphones to skyscrapers. By the time he passed away in 2020, Samsung had become one of the most powerful companies on the planet, with a market value of over $350 billion. But who would take his place? Enter Lee Jae-yong, the only son and the chosen heir. Born into wealth and educated at Harvard Business School, he was groomed from the start to inherit the Samsung throne. By the early 2000s, Lee Jae-yong had secured key roles within Samsung, earning him a reputation as a modern, business-savvy leader. He played a major role in Samsung's global expansion, helping the company overtake Apple in smartphone sales and dominate the semiconductor industry. But behind the scenes, trouble was brewing. Because in South Korea, wealth alone doesn't guarantee power, especially when the government is watching your every move. To control an empire worth hundreds of billions, you need more than just a famous last name, you need power. And for Lee Jae-yong, that meant securing his grip on Samsung Electronics, the crown jewel of the Samsung empire. But there was one problem. He didn't directly own most of it. Even though the Lee family founded Samsung, they didn't own the majority of its shares outright. Instead, they controlled it through a complex web of subsidiaries and cross-shareholdings, a classic Chaebol strategy. The word Chaebol is a combination of the Korean words Chae, meaning wealth, and Bol, meaning clan or clique. It basically means a large industrial South Korean conglomerate run and controlled by an individual or family. A chaebol often consists of multiple affiliates across diverse industries, controlled by a person or group. It meant that without a major restructuring, Lee Jae-yong couldn't inherit absolute control. When Lee Kun-hee's health started declining, Lee Jae-yong needed to consolidate his power quickly. And that's where things took a dark turn. In 2015, Samsung orchestrated a controversial merger between two of its subsidiaries, Samsung C&T and Chaebol Industries. It was a deal so controversial that it would trigger one of the biggest corruption scandals in South Korea's history. Lee Jae-yong held a significant stake in Chaebol Industries, a Samsung subsidiary. Meanwhile, another subsidiary, Samsung C&T, held critical shares in Samsung Electronics, the real golden ticket to power. By merging the two companies, Lee could consolidate his control over Samsung Electronics without spending billions to buy additional shares. But there was a problem. The deal wasn't beneficial to all shareholders, especially foreign investors like the US hedge fund Elliott Management, which strongly opposed the merger, arguing it undervalued Samsung C&T's stock and unfairly benefited Lee Jae-yong. So, how did Lee ensure the deal went through despite investor resistance? He allegedly turned to one of the most powerful people in South Korea, the president herself. What started as a corporate power move soon exploded into a full-scale national scandal. To push the Samsung C&T merger through, Lee Jae-yong allegedly sought the help of President Park Geun-hye and her mysterious confidant, Choi Soon-sil. Choi wasn't just any political advisor, she was the secret power behind the presidency. She had no official government position, yet she reportedly dictated state policies, influenced business decisions, and controlled access to the president. According to prosecutors, Samsung funneled over $37 million in bribes to entities linked to Choi Soon-sil. This money allegedly went to her non-profit organisations and even helped fund her daughter's equestrian training in Europe. In return, President Park's administration pressured South Korea's National Pension Service, NPS, to approve the Samsung merger, despite strong opposition. Why was the NPS involved? Because it was a major shareholder in Samsung C&T, and its vote was crucial in determining the fate of the deal. The result? The NPS voted in favour of the merger, helping Lee secure his path to power. But the fallout was disastrous. In 2016, investigative journalists uncovered the corruption scheme and all hell broke loose. Hundreds of thousands of South Koreans took to the streets in what became the largest protest movement in the country's history, demanding President Park's impeachment. By 2017, she was removed from office, arrested, and later sentenced to 25 years in prison for corruption and abuse of power. And Lee Jae-yong, he was arrested, convicted, and sentenced to 5 years in prison for bribery, embezzlement, and perjury. It was a stunning fall from grace. But as history would soon show, Samsung's influence ran deeper than anyone imagined. For a moment, it looked like the Samsung dynasty was crumbling. In 2018, after serving just 1 year, Lee Jae-yong's prison sentence was suddenly reduced, and he was released on probation. South Korea's appellate court reduced his sentence to 2.5 years, suspending most of it. The court ruled that some of the bribery charges were weaker than initially thought, a decision that left many South Koreans furious. To the public, this wasn't justice. It was yet another example of how chaebols like Samsung were too big to jail. Even as Lee Jae-yong regained freedom, his legal battles weren't over. The billionaire was sent back to prison in January 2021 for 2.5 years without a suspension after the Seoul High Court found him guilty of embezzlement and bribery. But once again, he wouldn't stay there for long. He was released on parole in August 2021, and just a year later, in August 2022, Lee Jae-yong received a full presidential pardon. The government claimed this was for the good of the national economy, arguing that South Korea needed Samsung's leadership to stay competitive in the global tech race. And just like that, he was back. By the end of the year, Lee Jae-yong was officially reinstated as Samsung's executive chairman, reclaiming the empire his father had left behind. In 2024, Lee was found not guilty by a Seoul court on charges of stock manipulation and accounting fraud related to the 2015 Samsung C&T merger that prosecutors said helped Lee cement control of the Samsung conglomerate. With his legal troubles mostly behind him, Lee Jae-yong now faces a different challenge, proving he can lead Samsung into the future. Under Lee Jae-yong's leadership, Samsung is pushing into AI, quantum computing, and next-generation semiconductors, all while maintaining its dominance in smartphones and TVs. But while he was battling legal troubles, another crisis was looming: the family's massive inheritance tax bill. When Lee Kun-hee passed away in October 2020, he left behind an estate worth an estimated $21 billion. South Korea has one of the highest inheritance tax rates in the world, up to 50% on large estates. This meant that the Lee family had to pay a staggering $10.7 billion in taxes, one of the largest inheritance tax bills in history. To pay this, the Lee family had to take drastic measures, such as donating over $900 million to medical and cultural institutions to offset the tax burden. They also pledged to sell off some of their shares in Samsung subsidiaries, though they structured the sales carefully to maintain control over the empire. Despite these efforts, they had to agree to pay the tax bill in installments over 5 years. This case reignited debates in South Korea about whether Chaebol families should inherit power without restrictions. Critics argued that these powerful business dynasties should face stronger regulations, while supporters claimed that Samsung's success was tied to the stability of the Lee family's leadership. While the Lee empire faced numerous legal battles with authorities, over in Singapore, another billionaire family was locked in a battle of their own, one that threatened to tear apart the empire from within. The Kwek dynasty, one of Asia's wealthiest families, has been caught in a high-stakes feud over wealth, control, and legacy. But how did it all begin? And what's at stake for one of Singapore's most powerful business empires? Find out in Father vs. Son, the billion-dollar battle that shook Singapore.